Hey, how's everybody doing today? I had another thought that I wanted to run by you all for your consideration. In that, one of the things that I've come across come across when researching how to hold these people accountable, one of the things that I've come across several times is the idea of filing a formal complaint with different so-called authorities. And when I did a little more digging, it came to my attention, and I kind of realized this, but I didn't know it for a fact, but now I do, that the affidavits that I had written and had notarized were in fact formal complaints. So all of the affidavits that I have sent to Donald Mason, Tony Corey, Doug Mary, the various courts, um, other personnel, other representatives of these different organizations. All of these affidavits that I have created and had notarized, therefore making them an affidavit of which I'm the affiant of, are in fact formal complaints. And so not only have these incompetent public servants ignored their duties and obligations to perform when considering uh, disturbances of the peace and public safety concerns, but they also are ignoring formal complaints. Um, Now, here in Ohio, or how should I say, on the land that's called Ohio, gotta change my terminology here. Um, Now, according to Ohio Revised Code, there's a thing called home rule status, or Ohio is what's known as a home rule state. Now, what these incompetent public servants seem to think is that status gives them carte blanche authority to do whatever they want, regardless of established law, established by the legislation, whether it be local, state, or federal, and especially the Constitution. Apparently, these people, I guess I should say persons, because they're acting as a corporate person in that capacity, um, they've ignored the formal complaints that I've outlined, the crimes that have been committed, the specific codes that have been violated. I've articulated not only the codes, but how the codes were violated by these particular persons. Now that goes for, let's see, what's his name? Sean Thomas Porter, uh, Chris R. Andrews, I think. I'm not sure what his full title is, what his full name is, rather, because he seems to obfuscate that. So um, it's probably Christopher, and I want to say that his middle initial is an R. But anyway, that's I'm getting off the topic, off the point. This is just another one of the incompetent detectives that uh, is hiding their true identity. Um, I mean, this is par for the course with these people. Um, by omitting their first name, going by their second name, abbreviating middle names, um, which in some instances, okay, I get it, but these people need to be identified. They're acting as a public servant. They don't have the right to withhold their identifying information, specifically a name to identify them, a full name. They are required by law, when asked to identify, to identify themselves. And you can look it up yourself. You know, I don't expect any of you to take my word for it. So you can look up that law. Just do a little search and research laws that require public servants to identify themselves. You'll find your answer. So yeah, so they're ignoring formal complaints. Now keep this in mind as well. It's really no surprise because when I had filed the civil suit against the city public servants for their actions and their crimes that they committed, I had filed with the court multiple affidavits / formal complaints, of which I also supplied evidence supporting those formal complaints, evidencing the crimes that were committed. And that information, those facts, were completely ignored by Mark C. Flegel and excused by people that had nothing to do with the matter, called attorneys. They had no formal knowledge, no personal knowledge of the situation. Everything they were going by was hearsay. And even with the evidence that I had supplied that evidenced the crimes that were committed, they ignored all that as well. And so not only in the cases where they came after me and attacked me and dragged me through a ridiculous, fraudulent court experience, and in many of those cases and instances, I won. I beat them at their own game. But in all of those cases, and nearly all of them, I had filed affidavits / formal complaints with the court to controvert the claims by the so-called detectives, these incompetent these incompetent persons that apparently don't know how to perform an adequate investigation. That was admitted to by Sean Thomas Porter on the stand. I have it on a recording here on this channel. He admitted on the stand under oath that he's an idiot. Not in those exact words, of course. But, you know, I got him to admit that. Because that's how dumb he is. And then in this most recent fraudulent action that was initiated, actually technically by Sean Thomas Porter, but because he was named in my lawsuit at the time, the city personnel had switched the paperwork and removed Sean Thomas Porter from the paperwork, which, of course, he goes by Tom Porter, and put Chris Andrews on the case. And immediately, I could tell that he wasn't any brighter than Sean Thomas Porter, because in doing the actions that he did, he committed multiple crimes, multiple violations. Now, according to some people, they like to think that they have immunity for their actions. So for some reason, which it's actually contrary and contradicting the Constitution, by giving people more rights than others, and allowing them to commit crimes and create a serious situation concerning public safety in the community, and they are immune from accountability because idiotic people think that they're heroes. Think that just because they wear a badge and wear a uniform that there's some kind of gift from God. Well, I hate to tell you, if that's the way you think, that's what they want you to think. So that way they can keep duping you and using your ignorance to their advantage so you can keep supporting their organized crime. Because that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. The people who are supposed to be law enforcement not only don't know the law, but apparently don't even know how to properly apply it. And on top of that, they're ignoring formal complaints. So this is something that needs to be fixed, because how can there be accountability for anybody? How can anybody get recourse when they or their property has been damaged or injured from these people, when they are essentially, what's the word, sheltered? It's kind of like a spoiled brat that has a parent that's enabling of the spoiled activity. And so when you get a spoiled brat that acts spoiled, and you got a parent that doesn't want to hold that child accountable for their actions and teach them how to act appropriately, hold them to a higher standard. See, when the so-called authority, or when the authority figure, I should say, is enabling of the spoiled brat activity, it empowers the spoiled brat. It makes the spoiled brat even more spoiled. But I never understood why these enabling parents, whether literally or in the example figuratively, why they never realize that if they don't like the activity, if they truly are bothered by the spoiled brat activity, all they need to do is put their foot down and say no. Chastise the child for their misconduct. Punish them in some way, shape, or form. I'm not saying be physical, but there's got to be some form of accountability. That's the only way that people can learn right from wrong. If they continue to do wrong and they're rewarded for it, all that does is promote the wrongdoing. And then we wonder why things are the way they are. At this point, I'm not 100% sure if I can even trust the federal district court to pay attention to formal complaints. I am certainly going to make an attempt, because I'm interested to find out for myself what the truth of the matter is. Are they going to ignore it? Are they going to condone it too? Because if this is the case, if this is what these public servants are going to do at all of these levels, I don't understand what their thinking is, what their motives are. How can they possibly think that they are going to be better off in the long run by destroying the communities and the neighborhoods that we all live in or around? They're creating just as much of a problem for themselves as they are everybody else in the long run. Granted, they may not be dragged through courts and thrown in a cage and have their life threatened and have their property stolen and all this kind of stuff. But the results of that pattern of activity, it's only detrimental to our society. And although I am all for supporting public servants, good public servants that actually do their jobs correctly, I cannot turn a blind eye to the bad apples just because there's a few good ones out there. If you're a public servant that does the right thing, if you have a conscience, if you have empathy, if you honestly do what you can do to help other people in the capacity that you're in, then hey, bless you. But you people not, saying anything, not speaking up, not reporting the malfeasance or misconduct or crimes that your colleagues are committing is adding to this. So I don't care how good you are or what good you do. All it takes for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing. Or women, for that matter, or anybody. So no matter how good you think you are, if you turn a blind eye to your fellow brothers and sisters in the thin blue line, or turn a blind eye to your fellow colleagues in whatever organization you're in, and you don't report that information for fear of retaliation, or fear you might lose your job, or fear of damaging your reputation because maybe somebody will look at you as a snitch or something like that. Well, it's that type of cowardly mentality and activity that's contributing to all of this that we're experiencing. This tyranny. So if you're listening to this, and if you have empathy, if you have a conscience, if you're in a position as a public servant, you not only owe it to yourself, but you owe it to the people to report misconduct to the proper authorities, to record it, whether audio or video or putting it on paper, writing reports, keeping a list of activities. This is what you all should be doing, because you all are the ones behind closed doors with the bad apples. You all are privy to much more of the ins and outs of what these bad apples do outside of the public eye. And if you do not report this activity, this misconduct, I don't care how good you think you are, you're just as bad as the rest of them. So I want you to keep that in mind. What is going on here is not just an isolated incident, necessarily. It's not just a one-off situation. This is rampant and out of control. And the only reason it's not stopping is because a majority of the people, like my neighbors around here in this neighborhood, are cowards. They would rather keep their mouth shut and go along to get along and just deal with whatever comes their way eventually, rather than paying attention now and preventing some type of evil in the future. And again, it just baffles me because some of these people are veterans. So apparently we didn't all serve for the same reasons. Apparently we don't all have the same ideas. I mean, that's obvious. But as veterans, we should have a better what's the word? Responsibility. Because after all, what did we serve for? I mean, wasn't the point of serving to protect our freedoms and liberties and protect the Constitution, protect the people, so on and so forth, protect the country? Wasn't that the point of serving? At least it was for me. I mean, maybe for some of these people that are, their heads are too small. Maybe they joined up just to go kill people. And they got that experience, and now they really don't care what happens. I really don't know. I can't speak for other people. I can just speculate, but it's interesting. It's interesting to me that with all, I mean, not only in the community here, but even some of these public servants are veterans as well. And for them to be veterans, for them to have served, you know, maybe they just don't value the sacrifices that were made. Or maybe they didn't have the experience like I did. Maybe they didn't have an experience like many others where they lost fellow soldiers, friends, comrades, whatever you want to call them. Brothers in arms. Maybe they never experienced that. So maybe they don't value those sacrifices as much. And maybe because of that, they don't give a shit about how our society is destroyed. Because they had their so-called 15 seconds of fame. They had their moment of glory. They had their experience that they were looking for. You know, as psychotic as it is, you know, there were definitely people that I experienced in, you know, during my service that fit that description. That were there not to help and protect people and, you know, fight to protect people and so forth and do the right thing. No, they were there just for an experience. They wanted to cause harm, hurt other people or something. I don't know. I mean, that's the only thing I can deduce. Because why else would someone who served, and if they had experienced any loss, any personal experience of sacrifice from someone else or personal sacrifice of themselves, and for them to now turn their backs on we the people, turn their backs on the Constitution, well, that's not only being a coward, that's being a traitor. So that's just food for thought. If you're in the area, if you're in the neighborhood, if you're a veteran, think about it. Talk about it with your veteran buddies. Ask them what they, you know, what they think about it. Ask them if they're okay with the local public servants ignoring the Constitution, ignoring people's rights, ignoring due process, and threatening people's lives, threatening people's property, stealing people's property, violating the Second Amendment. There's a reason why I don't hang out with many people. There's a reason why I don't go out and hang out at bars and clubs and socialize with people. Mostly because I can't stand most people, but other than that, it's because a lot of these people are two-faced. And even the veterans that I've met in the area, not all, but a majority of the veterans that I met in the area, I don't care to have them as friends. Because they're not trustworthy people. They don't have a character that's trustworthy. So people may look at me and laugh and point their finger and, you know, get amusement out of whatever, you know, bullshit that they make up in their feeble little minds. But the difference between me and most people is I'm willing to do what most people aren't. I'm willing to disconnect myself from society and dig in not only to learn more about myself and develop my own character, but learn more about the reality that I'm in and knowing the truth about it. Testing these things that we're told and taught about and seeing if what I'm told is in fact true. Because if I don't go through the process of testing that and making sure that it's true for myself, then I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot that deserves what I get. And that's most people out there. So I want you to think about that. If you're a veteran listening to this, what have you done to help? What have you done to make a difference? And if you've done something, if you've stood up, if you stood and pushed back against some of these people, if you've gone out into the community, if you've helped with homelessness or feeding the hungry and those, more power to you. Bless you. I appreciate you. But there's more that needs to be done. And if you're the veteran that is sitting on your ass, making excuses for your own cowardice and your own laziness, and saying, "Oh, I'll worry about it when it comes to my doorstep," well, by doing that, you're making all the sacrifices that were made for our freedoms in the past in vain.